I'm going to talk through 10 call center issues that are faced currently. But I'm going to make today not so much a lecture as an interactive session. So I'll run through 10 issues, and we've got an awful lot of shared experience in the room. So what I'd like you to do is, if you see an issue of which you've seen an innovative solution or you're doing something on it, if you can just make a note in your book, and then once I've finished going through the top 10, we'll go around the tables, give you a little time to discuss, and we'll try and bring out some of that shared experience. So the first issue I want to talk about is very much around email. Email volumes are growing, and there's a sort of gradual decline in the percentage of use of the telephone. Currently, we're about 10.8% email. This is according to Steve Morrell from Contact Babel. These are just the very latest figures. So there's growing use in email, but I think there's a bit of a disconnect between when you send an email and when you get an answer back. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to look as a group at the target times in your organizations you have for handling an email. So what I'd like everyone to do is, if you can all stand up, everyone in the room please stand up. Now, if you don't have a contact center, or if your contact center doesn't have email, could you sit down, please? Right, so now these are all the contact centers with email. Right, if your email target response time is 5 days or over, please sit down. If it's 2 days or over, please sit down. If it's more than 24 hours, please sit down. If it's more than 12 hours as an email response time, please sit down. If it's more than 8 hours, sit down. If it's more than 4 hours, email response time, sit down. If it's more than 2 hours, sit down. 1 hour, sit down. 15 minutes, sit down. Is anyone still standing up? 60 seconds? No, I think that's the lot. So I thought that was quite interesting. Let's see how that compares with a poll that we've been running on Call Center Helper in the last 2 weeks. We conducted a poll, 400 people, and what you see overall is that, by and large, most people's email response time is 24 hours or more. Now, we do that because that suits us. We've got more time to respond to it. I know there's some practical issues, like, if you're doing Monday to Friday customer service and someone sends an email at 7 o'clock on a Friday, then there's a certain degree you're not going to be able to answer that within a few minutes. But that's actually quite a slow response time. And if you're phoning in by phone, you typically get answered within a minute, typically within 20 seconds. So I think there's a bit of a problem there, and that's actually starting to drive people to go into other channels. For instance, internet chat. You typically get response to internet chat within 15 seconds. So think about it. I could send an email and I get answered in 24 hours, or I can do internet chat and get answered in 15 seconds, or at least the first part of the answer there. So that's kind of an interesting dichotomy. The other interesting part with email, this was once said to me, email is for old folks. I love email. I don't know what that says about me. But the younger generation prefer text and chat. My 13-year-old son, for instance, does not have an email account. He does everything through either text or through social media channels, instant messaging, and the like. And I think what's starting to happen then is that dealing with internet chat is now becoming the big issue. It's driven by young people. It's, for instance, easier on the move. If you want to involve in a conversation on a train, you can pick up the phone, everyone in the carriage hears you, or you can start it on internet chat, in which case only the people looking over your shoulders can see what you're talking about. But I think it's also driven by the poor response times that we've got. And I guess the real holy grail overall is how we drive self-service. And by self-service, I always mean web self-service. I think there's a big problem that we have if we start trying to do self-service over the telephone. I think people, if they want self-service these days, they go through a web. If they want to speak to a person, they want to speak to a person. And I think confusing the two is rather dangerous. Another issue. Call centers are becoming increasingly difficult technically. And these are just some of the building blocks in a sort of modern contact center. You may have an ACD, you may have a bit of CTI, you have an IVR, an outbound dialer, a workforce management system, you might have an email system, the website, you've got to deal with social media, you've got your own application CRM. And these seem to be springing up all the time, and it gets very difficult to deal with that. And then if you go and compound that with multi-site, where you may have a different module on one site, just color-coded them to another, you're dramatically increasing the level of complexity. And I think that's one of the things why I'm seeing almost every day, one company is starting to buy up another company these days to sort of consolidate things together. Social media is starting to drive change, and been doing a lot of conversations with people recently about social media. And I think there's a lot of nervousness at senior levels within companies, that's what people are telling me, around social media and what it's going to do to businesses. And there's a sort of kind of, well, let's pretend it doesn't exist type of attitude in a lot of cases. And my sort of advice to be that was, just because you're not listening doesn't mean to say that it's not happening. We did another survey on social media and said, who is handling social media in most organizations? And look, guess who's handling it? It's marketing, and only in a certain number of cases is it the contact center. Now, marketing like to use it as, if you like, an outbound channel, but I think customers are increasingly wanting to use it as an inbound channel. It's still, overall, it's quite small. In most call centers, it tends to be less than 5, less than 10 agents handling social media transactions. And it's relatively small volumes in most organizations, typically less than 25 interactions a day. But that's certainly an area that's getting a lot of time overall. The other area I think I want to talk through is broken processes. We're brilliant in contact centers of providing the sticking plaster over problems. People got a problem, we can generally talk people through it. But we don't actually get to the root cause analysis. And that's really spotting what is that real problem that people are calling about. And we've got a whole mass of data. So it is really like here, trying to find the picture of the needle in the haystack. There are some areas, things like speech analytics, you'll hear a lot talked about. I think speech analytics is potentially one solution to that issue, which really helps you to understand what customers are talking about. So that's a bit about the sort of the processes and the technology. And then I'd like to talk through about some of the human issues. And one of the issues I think we're going to have to deal with is agent engagement. Now, over a couple of days, this is just about 3 days worth, I just monitored what people were saying on Twitter about call centers and what it's like to work in a call center. At the top here, we've got someone addressing someone called misconduct. It's only call center work, it's rubbish, I hate it. There's a few amusing ones. The awkward moment when you work in a call center and plan your escape. It's official, there'll be a chapter in my novel denoting the horrors of call center work. And I think probably the most telling of this one is this gentleman here. I used to work at the Orange call center. I seem to remember I didn't quit, I just stopped going. Which leads on to the Great Taboo, which one contact center manager described to me as the A word, the word that no one talks about. Anyone's got an idea what the A word might be? Absence. It's the Great Taboo. We never, ever talk about absence. Manifests itself most typically on a Monday morning. We've got a very young workforce. They have that Monday morning feeling, generally as a result of that Sunday evening feeling in the bar. And they think, oh, I don't want to go to work today. And they don't. And it's not untypical in call centers for that to be 10%, 14% absence rates on a Monday morning. Now, I'm not going to embarrass anyone in the room, but it's a real big problem that a lot of us just don't seem to want to talk about, the A word. Not helped, the fact that we're very, very efficient organizations. We have very flat career structures. So we have 6 to 10 people reporting into a team leader. We have multiple team leaders reporting into a contact center manager. But if you're working on the phones, there's actually very limited opportunities for progression, unless you leave and go somewhere else. Or the big problem that affects a lot of us is you leave to go to somewhere else in the organization. So we become, if you like, the continual talent pool of bringing people in, and then just as they're starting to get useful, we lose them out of the organization. So I think that whole bit with agent engagement leads to a problem with customer churn, because there's quite a simple correlation. that if you've got happy and engaged agents, you tend to have happy customers. And customer churn is something that really has a big problem across all of our industry. And I think the last issue I talk through is agent knowledge levels. The problem with overall is I see that we're very, very good as an industry on induction training. So we'll get people in through the door. We'll give them somewhere between 2 days and maybe 6 weeks of induction training to bring them into the organization. But from then on, what we're very good at is on-the-job training, or just ask the supervisor if you get stuck. And I think there's a real problem we've got, and certainly one of the things that's been talked about is that when you get to social media, you now have customers who know potentially an awful lot more than the actual agent in the contact center does. So there's a real disbalance there. Quite often, things like product knowledge levels are often much lower than they should be. So we've got a range of issues there. So I've whistled through that briefly. We've got an awful lot of shared experience within the room. So what I'd like to get everyone to do now is we're going to give you 3 minutes to sit around, 3 to 4 minutes to sit around your tables and discuss what interesting solutions you've seen or that you've been involved with to any of those issues, and then I'll go around the table. Thank you.
We're currently looking at, we're rolling out our social media element. We're implementing a Vault web page where customers can go online or could use their mobile phone to check if there's a power cut in their area, and they can sort of register for SMS updates or do a web chat and so on and so forth. We're looking at speech analytics as well. We're here today, and one of the reasons why. And that's basically it.
Okay, wonderful. So very much around call avoidance there.
We were just discussing one of your issues, which was flat career structures, and one of the things we try and do in our business is to rotate people out of the call centre. We put them on the factory floor where we actually manufacture the product, so it increases the amount of product knowledge that they have, gives them a day off once a week, and it allows us to have a level of multi-skilling that tends to work quite well. But I recognise not everybody has that ability to be able to move people around their facilities.
We've given our agents more empowerment, so therefore from negotiation on prices and retaining business. So instead of passing customers to our account managers, they can actually negotiate on the phone. So we've got happy customers and happy agents taking on more responsibility.
Good one.
Fabulous, wonderful. I think we've got another one here.
On the same vein, but in public sector, we've actually enabled our staff to do the negotiations on reminders and summonses for council tax, which means that we've got satisfaction at first point of contact, and staff feel engaged and enabled to make those decisions.
Is anyone able to make any inroads into the A word? Anyone doing anything interesting on absence?
Our organisation has things called duvet days, where they're allowed 10 days a year to just phone up that morning and say, sorry, I'm staying in bed today. And it's worked.
Yeah, wonderful.
We're developing our social engagement model at the moment, and a lot of the challenges of that, and what we're sort of focusing on is how we're going to harvest or gather people's social media handles and details so that we can identify them in our CRM system. And so we don't have the answer yet, but we've got a lot of strategies we're discussing. We'd be interested to hear if anybody does.
As more and more people use email, we want to get them off the phone, to be honest. That's one of the drivers, and the best way of doing that is to answer the emails quickly. So it's just a matter of breaking teams into response teams and resolution teams, as we call them. And the response teams are literally sitting on emails constantly waiting for them to come in. And our target is an hour, but the reality is it is often 5 or 10 minutes before somebody gets back to you on an email. So that's the way we've addressed it. But, talking about victim of your own success and all that, you do end up getting more and more and more emails. And we've moved across into self-service, online chat, but actually there's very little uptake in that. People want to use email at the moment. That's still the end thing. So we're here learning about social media, but for us it's not really happening so much right now. Email is the main channel.
Just to comment about absence and engagement, we go to great lengths to empower people. We're retailers, and yesterday somebody who was effectively on minimum wage did a £800 concession for someone, And that did get bounced up to me, but that helps the guys engage a lot. Also, we intentionally over-recruit. The guys who are working with us are the best we can find. We give them a very wide scope of material to work with rather than deep channels of single style material. And I also lend them out. We're lucky our call centre is attached to head office. And I realised that a lot of head office was paying for temps. Now, temps cost 50% more. So we're now also a resource pool. That breaks down departmental boundaries and allows our guys to see more of the background story. And Bian's point about needing quick routes to get into different departments in head office to get things fixed, we've got a lot of informal channels and can get things moved quickly. And quite often the guy who takes the call can visualize what's going on and who needs to be spoken to. So the solution emerges almost as we're handling the situation.
So that's all very much about letting your staff go out into other departments as a sort of resource pool.
Yeah, really quite holistic in that sense. We use that buzzword. Obviously, you need to make sure your governance is right. Obviously, you have to make sure that you don't get inconsistencies in policy and approaches. But what it does do, it certainly helps with our absence and with a degree of buy-in in the team. Not a solution that everyone can do. Geographically, you're often very broken up. But for us, it's worked really well.
That's wonderful. Well, as I said, there were an awful lot of shared experience in the room. That's all we've got time for right now. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John G.